Welcome everyone. This is Desi Vijay. I'm a NorthSouth National Team member and a coordinator for webinars. Glad to see you all here today. Wish you all a happy new year. Just like last year, we are planning to bring in a few of our past winners and other champions of various subject matters to talk to their younger peers about their experiences and answer their questions and encourage them to participate in the contest. We call this as Meet the Pro type webinar. We are starting this year with ever popular subject, spelling and vocab. And thank you for attending and thank you for all your support. These pros are here to share their thoughts, their experiences, and answer your questions. So without further ado, I would like to get on with the show. We have with us the current president of NorthSouth, Dr. Balu Natarajan, here with us, and also, of course, Narayan Jenga, Dr. Krishna Gauri, with us today. The president, Dr. Balu, has been is the first Indian American ever to win a Scripps National Spelling Bee in 1985, and he has been a pronouncer in the first National NorthSouth Spelling Bee in 93. He's been grooming this organization now to the next level, and I really would like Dr. Balu to come forward and then introduce the panel to all of you. And Dr. Balu.
To Sreeniketh. We've got Navneet Murali. He is a sophomore at Middlesex County Academy for Allied Health and Biomedical Sciences. He's a two-time championship finalist at Scripps, placing in the top 12 in 2018 and 2019. He's also won the 2019 South Asian Spelling Bee, our North-South Senior Spelling Bee, and he's also an intermediate vocabulary bee champion. He does spelling coaching. He's lead vocabulary coach for NorthSouth, and he loves using an analytical and systematic approach, focusing on roots and language patterns. So he's going to help us out with a lot of information in this session. Other than that, he is passionate about neuroscience and has been a third place finisher at NorthSouth's Senior Brain Bee, and he aspires to be a physician. Jairam Hatwar became interested in language and spelling bees somewhere around the time while his brother was winning the 2014 National Spelling Bee, and Jairam has been a top finisher in our competitions and eventually was declared co-champion in the 2016 Scripps National Spelling Bee with another one of our panelists. He has a strong appreciation for different cultures, strong work ethic, and met many lifelong friends in the spelling journey, which we're always appreciative of sharing around here. And he and his family have actually written a book called Words from the Champs, and of course he's a volunteer coach for our foundation. He's also a competitor in golf and table tennis. He also plays the saxophone and is a participant in debate, traveling, writing, and volunteering. His co-champion was Negar Jenga. He's currently a junior in Austin, Texas in high school. 2019, he added the National Geography Bee Championship to the Scripps winning feat. He started doing spelling with NorthSouth Foundation at the age of 6, and after winning our Junior National Spelling Bee and Junior National Vocabulary Bee in 2014, he then became the youngest Scripps National Spelling Bee champion in 2016, and in fact is now in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the youngest person to do that. Beyond spelling and geography, he is involved in rowing and serves in his local community and learns neuroscience, and has been a big help as we have been elevating the standard of our spelling coaching for all of our kids across the country. We also have Nesa Modi was the runner-up of the 2018 Scripps National Spelling Bee and went to Washington, D.C. 5 times. She loves spelling in the English language, and now she has been a huge coach for our spelling and has been a big help in our contests as well. She's been engaged in current competitions, including the NorthSouth foundation activities. Loves learning Taekwondo, is a brown belt level 3, and she, in her spare time, loves reading and spending time with family. Her goal is to go to college and study medicine. And then finally, do we have Sreeniketh? Yes, we do. We've got him on camera, which is great. He's a voracious reader with an acute eye for the intricacies of language, and he is conversationally fluent in 4 languages, including being self-taught in Esperanto. He's a 2-time Scripps finalist, placed 7th in 2016 and 12th in 2017. Second place winner in North-South spelling and vocabulary competitions, and a top finisher, second place finisher in South Asian Spelling Bee as well. He's coached students on spelling and vocabulary, has been a volunteer coach for us, and is a big help in our vocabulary activities at all levels. And his own students have gone on to become finalists at Scripps as well. He is, outside of spelling, a Quiz Bowl national finalist, an ACT exam full score achiever, a Florida State History Fair 2020 finalist, and a science fiction writer, including a 2020 Gold Key recipient. So I could spend the next hour and a half extolling all their virtues, but I'm going to give it back to Dr. Vijay so we can get on.
Thank you, Dr. Balu, and definitely we can talk for hours. I would like to call in each one of them to give a few minutes to talk to the audience, and then about yourselves, or about whatever you want to talk about spelling, and how it helped you, how it went through this whole event, everything. Let's start with Navneet.
So my journey with spelling and vocabulary, it's certainly, I would say it's unique, because I started off with spelling and then I transitioned onto vocabulary, and I persisted with both of them. There was no real moment that I realized that spelling and vocabulary was what I wanted to do. I just in general always liked reading language, and I was a competitive person in general. And with a basic functioning understanding of language patterns, I was able to place 4th in my first regional spelling bee, and I was able to guess words like chanson using just that basic understanding. And it was around that time in elementary school that I realized that I had potential in spelling, and I just continued working harder, and thankfully I met with success. There was no real moment of realization that made me realize that I wanted to be a speller. It was kind of fluid and continuous for me, and just I think anyone can have a similar level of success achieved if they just put their minds towards spelling and vocabulary, and if they invest a lot of time in it. I think it's definitely something that's possible. One thing that's really important to emphasize for spelling and vocabulary is that there is no guarantee of success unless you know everything. So especially when I was in my earlier days, when I was new to spelling, I realized that not all bees would go in my favor. For example, in a county bee when I was really young in elementary school, I missed the word lachrymose, Lachrymose. And I guess you could call it an exception because it comes from the Latin root lacrima, meaning tear, and that's spelled Lacrima. But that was something that I would say, that was the first time I felt really upset that I missed something, but it was also the time that I realized that I shouldn't get discouraged by any of my performances in bees. I just sort of use them as stepping stones to succeed more. And I think that attitude that I have developed as a speller and through participating in vocabulary contests, it's something that has helped me out a lot, immensely in high school. First of all, in terms of better word choice, it's helped me literally in terms of essays, speaking, and there's also vocabulary tests. It's not really something that I have to consciously prepare for because I have that knowledge on the top of my head. But I guess more generally speaking, it's given me work ethic, which is something that's really important to develop. It's given me a lot of intangible benefits that I would say you can't really get from anywhere else. For example, perseverance, knowing that failures are just stepping stones in the path to success. A lot of the ideas and lessons that are really important to have, that are really important to apply in life, There are things that I learned and sort of practiced through spelling, through my spelling journey. That's what I want to start off with.
Nisa?
Yeah, so whenever I started spelling and kind of was first tasked with the idea of spelling versus vocab, it really just came with practice. I did a lot of practice tests that I made, other people made for myself, in which I mean, the question is like, which did you want to specialize in? But I realized pretty quick early on that it wasn't a matter, at least for me, in terms of specialization, because at the end of the day, for the preliminaries test at the Scripps National Spelling Bee, both are required. And if I do really good in one, but maybe not as good in the other, I'm still not going to advance. So it really was a matter for me, at least, of continuously practicing both, in terms of which I had a better aptitude for just right off the bat, definitely spelling. Vocab has always been more difficult for me. I've always just, no matter how much I prepare, I've always just done significantly better in spelling situations than in like solely vocab situations. So that's how I determined that. But still, at the end of the day, I had to like thoroughly prepare. Honestly, Navneet covered a lot of the bases. I feel like I'm just gonna be repeating information if I go on any longer, so I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Next, maybe Jadon.
Hi. So yeah, as much like both Nesa and Navneet, I got a very early exposure, perhaps even earlier than them, because my brother had participated in competitive spelling bees since basically I was in like kindergarten. So essentially, I got a really early exposure to spelling, and I never was really too interested in it until I really saw the type of work ethic and challenge, especially that my brother took when approaching the spelling bee, because I really saw the dedication that he put into it, and I felt like particularly spelling bees offer a really good avenue to put in hard work and obviously achieve great things, but mostly like develop these crucial skills like perseverance and hard determination, like the other panelists have already said. Yeah, mostly the perseverance, like to continue on that topic. My brother I've seen him firsthand, like deal with perseverance with the spelling bee, going all the way from placing third in the national finals to not even qualifying for the Scripps National Spelling Bee. And I saw that and I realized that, as Navneet said, you can never really take anything for granted. And that's another very valuable skill that I've learned in participating in these spelling bees, that you really need to cover all of the bases and ensure that at least you have exposure to all of the possible curriculum, which is a tip I always give to aspiring spelling bee competitors, is that try to cover the entire curriculum. If you happen to forget, that's all right, but at least you can say that you've every word that's put in front of you that you have seen before, and you have an ability to at least approach it. So that's my advice to all aspiring spelling bee competitors.
So let's continue with Negar.
Okay, so like Nesa, Navneet, and Jairam said, pretty much all of our experiences at the spelling bee are like common. That's just because often the top spellers are forged in somewhat of the same way. So I'm not going to repeat like the things that they've already said, because that would just be a waste of your time, but I will say some things that other people did not say. So the way I got into the spelling bee was sort of like Jairam's. My sister competed in the spelling bee, but the reason why I wanted to do it was because when I saw the list she was preparing, I saw these huge words, but at the end of the day, they were made out of the same letters as like easy words like cat or dog. And I thought it was really interesting to see these same letters just rearranged in a different way or with other letters that made such a different meaning. And so I wanted to take that journey of exploring all those different words and all those different meanings to explore different cultures around the world. And that's one thing that's really important when you are trying to figure out your passion for the spelling bee, is not to go in with the perspective that you're going to win or lose, but to go in with the perspective that you're trying to learn something from participating in the competition. And that's like the number one advice or encouragement that I can give you if you're figuring out if you want to participate or if you're participating and you feel like you're going nowhere. The most important thing to do is to look into why you enjoy spelling, not just why you're doing it to like win or lose, but why you're doing it to learn. Some people really like the way that spelling is like a puzzle because it's different patterns put together. Some people like spelling because it allows them to explore the world in different places. Some people like spelling just because it's something to work on and get better at. So learn what makes you tick while doing spelling and then focus your study plan around that rather than just making it like straight up memorizing or like another thing that you don't really like. Because when you focus your study plan around what you like in spelling, then you're digging into that passion each time you do spelling, and it makes you want to learn more and work harder. That's like the best advice I can give because that's what I followed and clearly it works. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Negar. Sreeniketh?
From an early age, as far as I can tell, I never made a conscious decision to go into vocabulary. It's just something that evolved naturally. I started involving myself with NSF at second grade. I'd say that I seriously started studying in vocabulary around sixth grade, but really even before then, it was packets and packets of studying. I think that what my experience is, and I hope I don't misrepresent any of you when I say this is what I hear from your experience as well, is that entering spelling or vocabulary isn't really a conscious decision, in that there's not one point where you say, yes, I want to do this. It's more a sequence of decisions of saying, yeah, I want to do coaching, buy this resource and study that. I want to go to the next competition. Oh, I made it to nationals. I think I'll study for a good amount of time this year. And then if you have eligibility next year as well, you probably want to do it that year as well. It's a series of microscopic decisions that eventually add up into a large thing, because this is a large undertaking of saying that, okay, you have a dictionary of 450,000 words, probably they added more now, and saying, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that, and also I'll get some a side of prize with that. It's an insane decision if you take it all at once, but you don't it all at once. You say, yeah, I'll do it. I'll piecemeal it, and then one day you look back and it is a decision that you've made in some. That seems to be what a lot of people's experience is with spelling vocabulary. Definitely is mine. So my advice to you, if you're thinking about getting into spelling and vocabulary, is don't commit yourself at any one time. Just take a few decisions. Say, oh, there's some resources. It's on the NSF website, but if you'd like me to say out loud for vocabulary, it's something like Norman Lewis's books, Word Power Made Easy. For spelling, it's something like Spell It, the Consolidated Word List, Words of Wisdom by Scott Reamer. Just those resources, and say, if you study that and you feel like you've got the hang of it, or you want to do more, do more. And if you're not sure, then maybe attend some coaching sessions, just a plug there, or just see what it is that you are finding difficult. And if you already are in spelling and vocabulary, my advice is just the fundamental piece of advice, not at all related to studying, that I can give you is detach yourself from the consequences of your studying. The results don't mean anything about your ability, or they do serve as some indication, but oftentimes there is a lot of luck involved. Why do you want to involve yourself in something where there is a lot of luck involved? The reason is that you enjoy the competition itself. You enjoy the craft. You enjoy studying. You don't. It's not really about the winning, and that's something that you don't really get until it's already there. Like when I read Words of Wisdom in, like, I don't know, 5th grade, there was this one line that said, yeah, the prize money is like $50,000-$60,000, but all the best spellers know that it's not really about the money. And those people who focus on the money will eventually lose. And I was like, yeah, I like $50,000. I'll say it's not about the money. But when I got to 7th, 8th grade and I was actually doing it on the stage, yeah, that very much applied to me. It's not really about the money. It's not really about first place or second. That detachment from the fruits of your actions, the fruits of your labor, and instead attachment to, did I do all that I could? Did I do everything that I felt that I could to invest myself into this situation, is far more valuable, I'd say. But yeah, I think that was a lot more generic or general advice about the philosophy of competition, but I hope that that was helpful to you.
Thank you, Sreeniketh. It's really great. Words of wisdom, Dr. Balu?
I think I will hold most of it until we get some more questions from the parents. I think there's a lot of experiential wisdom here, which is great. So I think we can get to the Q&A whenever you're ready. I do want to make sure that we get Mr. Jenga to turn on his phone, his camera. Narayana, are you still here?
So Dr. Balu, before Narayana speaks, can we get Navneet as well as Negar to give a brief of the contest? They have a 2-minute info session type of information that they can offer.
Sure.
And then Narayana can follow with the coaching info.
Right.
Yeah. Negar, can you please proceed with your spelling?
Yeah, I can go first. So I'll be talking mainly about the NSF regional competitions. A lot of you are probably familiar with the format, but for those of you that aren't, the regional competition is basically split into 2 phases. Phase 1 is all written. It's basically just 25 written words. Pronouncer will give you all the information for one word and then you write it down. I believe some of them are from the published list that will be given to you when you register for the competition, and some of them are outside of the published list. And then after phase 1, regardless of whether or not you do well, because we believe that every student should have a chance to participate fully throughout the competition, you move on to phase 2, and phase 2 is all oral, 6 oral rounds, and those are all from the published list. And you keep going through all 6 rounds, regardless of whether or not you get one correct. The part where how well you do matters is when the competition is over. So what happens is we tally up your score from phase 1 and phase 2, and then we just see who has like the most, and then it's just first, second, and third. And then there's a national cutoff, and then depending on whether or not you're at that cutoff or above that cutoff, you go to nationals. Sometimes there's like a wait list that you can be put on if you're around that range, but not necessarily like above it enough to qualify like by priority. But that's the general gist of the regional competition. And if you guys have any questions, you can definitely put them in the chat.
I just want to add one thing. So sometimes you're in a very high level chapter, right? And so there's the possibility of placing 5th or 6th in the chapter and then still qualifying for nationals. So there was one year when my older son did not get first, second, or third, but then he went to nationals, right? And he was actually able to place among the top finishers at the nationals. So some parents get worried that, oh, I need to choose a different chapter. No, we make the cutoff based on everybody. right? So you might get first, second, third within the chapter, but whether you move on or not is based on everybody. So it doesn't matter what chapter you're in terms of it is completely equal chance to be able to get into the national competition.
That's
Okay,
good.
so I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and share some information about the vocabulary bee. So NSF offers 2 vocabulary bees, JVB or the junior vocabulary bee, and IVB, the intermediate vocabulary bee. JVB is for students in grades 1 to 3, and IVB is for students in grades 4 through 8. So both vocabulary bees, they're divided into 2 phases broadly, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is the online written test. There are 25 words and you have 30 minutes to complete that test. All the words are multiple choice. And phase 2 is the oral round. It's online and it's with a live pronouncer on a Zoom call. And there's 6 rounds without eliminations. So regardless of whether you get a word correct or wrong, everyone does 6 words. So further elaborating on that, the phase 1 test, which has 25 questions, out of the 25 questions, 10 of them will be from a provided 1,000-word list, and the remaining 15 will be from external sources. And all the contestants answer the same 25 questions. And for phase 2, there are 6 words, and all the 6 words are sourced exclusively from the 1,000-word list. And each of the contestants will be asked a different word, and this is the oral part of the regionals. And again, as I said before, all the questions are multiple choice. There are 4 choices, and the contestants are to pick the choice that best encapsulates the definition. You get 1 point if the answer is correct, and you don't get any points if the answer is incorrect. You don't lose points for an incorrect answer. And your points are added up, and your score out of 31, so 25 from phase 1, 6 from phase 2, it determines if you advance to national finals. Again, if you're at or above the cutoff, you'd make it to national finals. So in terms of preparation, as soon as you register, you'll get access to this 1,000-word list. You can download it in the parent student portal on northsouth.org. And all the phase 2 words, again, will be from this 1,000-word list. All the phase 1 words, 10 of the 25 phase 1 words will be from this list. And NorthSouth will give you access to a vocabulary bee game as soon as you register, and it helps you master these list words. And I think that's really important. It's imperative to master this list for success at regionals. And out of the remaining 15 words in phase 1 that aren't from this 1,000-word list, all the words will be from Merriam-Webster's Unabridged, the online dictionary. And in terms of other resources, we kind of touched a little bit on that in the beginning, but apart from the 1,000-word list and the associated vocabulary bee game, there's Word Power Made Easy by Norman Lewis. I think Sreeniketh mentioned that a little earlier. And that's a helpful resource because it teaches vocabulary in a pretty structured manner. It's really systematic. That's why I like it. And there's word power columns in Reader's Digest. So I think you'd need to get a monthly subscription in order to access those columns. But they not only introduce you to new words, they also teach you how to use them in context. And I think that's really important in terms of vocabulary. You need to be able to not only know what words mean, you also need to be equally adept at using them in sentences and understanding what people mean when they use those words. And in general, SAT level words is something that's helpful to look at for especially IVB, because a lot of the words that they use in IVB, they are generally speaking at that level. And within the NorthSouth website, there is a link for the vocabulary bee. And if you check that, you'll get even more details about the contest.
Thank you. So let's now start the question and answers.
Krishnan, there are a couple of questions about some parents want to know about the formats for the nationals. I'm not sure if you're ready to share that at this point. And also they want to know if there is what is the minimum amount of points you need to pass the cutoff for the regional contest.
Well, let's get you to do the coaching part first, and then we will get to the questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, there was a question also for coaching that they're asking, what does NorthSouth Foundation coaching provide regarding spelling bee? And I will take that question.
Sure, go for it.
So I'm not sure how many parents are aware, but we started spelling bee coaching only a couple of years ago at NorthSouth. And all the people you are seeing on the screens today, video screens, they have played a very important role with NorthSouth getting up and running with spelling bee and vocabulary coaching, and they are still heavily involved. And you start hearing about when you go to other presentations and all that stuff, you will start hearing about our learning journey for the students at NorthSouth. And this is really in action. You are seeing the learning journey these 5 or 6 panelists went through with NorthSouth. So don't think about the coaching. I will tell you exactly what the coaching will give you, but also think about what NorthSouth gives to you for your kids by doing this contest. So not only the contest, they can become coaches, they can become leaders with the organization. And one of these people will be replacing me, Dr. Balu and Dr. Vijay eventually. So that's what we want the kids to get to with our foundation. For the coaching, we are heavily interested in parent feedback. It's just not like you come to the classes and we teach you the same thing every year. This year, for the contest prep club, we are doing this for the first time. We have not had this offering before. This was being done at a chapter level, but we are standardizing it at a national level with all these high-powered intellectuals giving us feedback into how do we organize these clubs and what do we actually teach the children. So this year, what we are trying to teach is those 1,000 words that Navneet and Negar were talking about that NorthSouth gives to the kids. And then we'll try our best in 6 to 8 weeks to get the children that are attending these contest prep clubs to master those 1,000 words. And we will also give them some tips to tackle out of list words because if you were listening to Negar and Navneet, there are going to be out of list words in the contest in the written part. All the oral will be from the list, but there will be a good percentage of questions that come from out of list. So we'll give them tips to tackle that. And there will be a mock B. They will actually practice what they will do at the regional contest in these classes. And we will give a review and feedback on how they did on those contests. That's what we are planning for this spring. And we also have our general fall session that will come up, which will be more focused on not the 1,000 words, but overall like how to tackle spelling bees and vocabulary bees. But for the contest prep club, that's our focus, to help them master all those 1,000 words. So the student registrations are open right now, and the seats are filling up fast, especially vocabulary goes really fast. And then spelling follows that. So I would encourage parents to register as soon as possible. If you log into your NorthSouth account, there is a coaching tab, and then you can click on register for coaching. And then based on your child's grade level, you will see whatever coaching levels they are, the appropriate coach levels will show up for registering, and you can register that. So Krishnan, I think the class will start the week of January 30th, and they will run for 8 weeks, and they will end a week or two before the actual contest date. So your kids will be ready for the contest. So that's
Are we
the
still
plan,
accepting
Krishnan.
coaches, sir?
Yeah, I am recruiting coaches all the time. Yeah. Yeah, so we may have to, because I think these parts will fill up pretty fast.
Yep. And then is there an incentive for coaches?
So Dr. Well, right now is the learning journey. I think maybe that's a question for one of these coaches, right? How it is helping by teaching at NorthSouth or coaching at NorthSouth, how it is improving their personality, how it is giving them support to learn the soft skills that may be helping in other areas. But I think we have grander plans eventually. So maybe you want to answer your own question. So what else can we do for these coaches? So that's a question back at you, Dr. Balu. I think right now I am just giving them an avenue to come here and improve their soft skills. But if there is anything else we can do for them beyond that.
No, I mean, I think we're trying our best, right, to invest in all of our volunteers. So, you know, in the next year, we'll be rolling out as a foundation quite a bit. So we're building that. We're actually bringing a lot of leaders, you know, beyond spelling, beyond math, right, to be able to teach. So those who are really investing in our foundation at the level of coaching, at the level of volunteers, right, we are going to be giving value-added opportunities, right? So if you're a youth volunteer, there are certain paths. If you're an adult volunteer, there are certain paths. So my goal over the next couple of years is those people who are really spending a lot of time volunteering here, you know, we're going to be supporting them with the soft skills necessary to build their resume further so that they can do things outside of the foundation, do more at work, get into better schools, be better at public speaking, et cetera, et cetera. So those are not launched in the moment, but they're actively being built. So that's just a bit of what's coming. We used to do some discounts for coaches' families. Is that part of contest prep clubs, or is that something different? Because I know that that's a question that comes up frequently.
Yeah, we are using the same infrastructure, so the same rules should apply that applied with normal fall coaching.
Yep, very good. All right,
Christian?
many thanks. Some of you heard heard Krishnan Gauri. Krishnan Gauri is our Chief Academic Officer, and Narayana Janga is our Chief Coaching Officer. So these are folks that spend dozens of hours a week making sure that all of these offerings can be brought to our kids and their parents. So many thanks to you. And of course, you've already seen Desi Vijay, who puts together these Meet the Pro sessions and other webinar sessions as well. So Desi, if you'd like, I can pitch some of the questions that are in the chat box to our various members.
Yes, please. Before you go, Dr. Paulo, there are questions about, are the prep club registrations open, or if not, how do they get in line now? Did you cover that, Narayana?
Yeah, I did cover that, and they are open.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they need to log into NorthSouth.org, click on the coaching tab, and then click on register for coaching.
Okay.
And they will be able to see those classes once they go through the screen prompts for their children.
Great. Dr. Paulo, go ahead.
Okay, very good. So we'll start with if a school, there's a whole bunch that have come through here. Let me see if I can get to it. Okay, the first one I'll ask, let me see if I can ask Jadon this question. What is the effect of the internet on spelling and vocabulary be in your mind?
Actually, this question might be better suited for other panelists who have probably used more digital methods of studying for spelling bee, but I was still kind of old-fashioned, I guess, in my study methods. I've been through the dictionary, like the hard copy dictionary, about 3 times, maybe even 4. And the way I at least studied, I know it's become quite modernized right now, but I just ensured that I had covered every single possible word that could be put forth to me when I step up to the microphone. So as long as the digital options, I know there are several websites that a lot of high-ranking spelling bee competitors have used to fruition. So as long as those options are allowing you to cover the entire curriculum from A to Z, then I would approve of them, and I think that it's a good way to move forward with them. But one other thing is, I don't want the digital method of studying spelling to become so monotonous that it's just you're memorizing the words, just going through lists and just memorizing every single word that is put in front of you. I still enjoy like actually understanding the foundations of the words, which include like the language patterns and the roots, which are basically what we try to focus on during our coaching classes while we are coaching these elementary school students. So that's my take on trying to approach the spelling bee in a whole fashion. Yeah.
All right, and then is there anyone else who wants to answer the internet question before we move on to the next one?
I'll give it a go.
Sure thing.
So, like Jerome said, absolutely. In the way that like competitors prepare for events, I think the internet has been very useful. I was one of those people who studied mostly through the internet and digital means rather than paper copies. I used some quizzing websites a lot. by creating sets and going like just memorizing by typing and such. But I think there's another way to also think about this, being the way that contests are held in the first place. So I know NSF has been doing this in light of COVID recently, but as like a contest director here, I've noticed the general shift more towards having contests online and over the internet. And I really do think that in some ways it has really like drastically changed the competition and the way that they're run as like a whole, not just at NSF, because now we can continue to compete and foster these learning environments without being worried about transmission of disease, especially now in terms of COVID. And I really think it has been very useful in keeping the competitive spirit alive in a time where we can't see each other and we can't fly across the country to like some college where we would all meet and, you know, have lunch together. We can't do those things anymore, but we can still kind of test our knowledge in a competitive space with other people the same way that we would be able to in person. So I think it really has revolutionized in that way as well.
So while you're on that topic, let's talk about that and we'll get back to some of the other questions, right? But, you know, we've spoken earlier and here a little bit about the concept of the learning journey, right? And so one of the questions that's being posed is, okay, yeah, so it's a contest, you know, but if you don't win, you're just going to get disappointed or sad, right? So Negar, I'd love for you to answer that because you talked earlier about what you like, right? And so talk to us a little bit more about spelling, about vocab, and then what you like. And maybe what you like is winning a trophy, but tell us a little bit more.
So first of all, I just want to say like spelling and vocab to me are kind of the same thing, just because you can't really study spelling in what it's meant to be studied without studying vocab, because the idea of spelling is to learn about the stories of words, and you can't really understand the story without studying the story, which is the definition. And so, first of all, I just want to start with that. And the second thing is there are a lot of things I like about spelling and vocabulary, like just even outside of a competition perspective. One example that I often use is like spelling teaches you a lot about global cultures and things that you wouldn't really pick up just from reading like Wikipedia or something like that. There are subtle things about culture that you learn through words. And one of those is like in Afrikaans, you notice that a lot of the words are about like diseases or conditions about cows or sheep. And through things like that, you learn like cattle and livestock are really important to the Afrikaans people. And then just countless things like that I've learned about people, and I feel like that's what I love most about spelling, is that you can just learn about a culture or people around the world just through the words that they put out through us. And sometimes the English language doesn't really do a good job of translating those words, but it's better than nothing. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we can really overstate this, right? Like if you're not interested in learning for the sake of learning, right, none of this is going to be worth it, right? Like, you know, you cannot, and Sreeniketh talked about this, right? You can't go in for the money, you can't go in for the trophy, right? You have to go in enjoying what it is you're learning. And that is, it's no different from piano or taekwondo or rowing or any of the other things that our panelists do or any other things that parents or children do. You got to find something about it that is interesting and create that spark, a spark both for the parent and a spark for the child. And then you have to enjoy learning it together and enjoy the journey together. If you don't enjoy the journey, there is no trophy and there is no prize money that's going to be worth it. We have to figure out how it becomes fun to learn. And in that regard, the internet can be a positive adjunct if you'd like. So for example, right, you're driving with your kid and you see the name of a street and you ask your child, what does that word mean? Right? And if they have your phone or if they have their phone or iPad with them, they can look it up immediately, right? And you can have a lovely conversation while you're driving them about that particular word. Or you can look at a tree. Okay, what tree is that? What do we know about it? What can we study about it? How is it spelled? There's so much that we can learn together, which most of us as parents, that's how we were taught by our parents before the internet. So the internet shouldn't replace curiosity. The internet should help us supplement our curiosity and gives us the amazing opportunity to learn in real time what we used to be told to go look it up or go to the library and look up later on. Now we can find it out immediately. There was a Harvard Business Review issue in September of 2018 dedicated to curiosity. And what this looked at were the companies that had leaders that were curious. The companies with leaders who were curious, those were the companies that sustained over time. And so learning has to be based on each of our curiosities. When it is, then we will learn. It's not about the prize money and it's not about the trophy. I can't overstate that. Let's go to our next question. You talked a little bit about whether we could do vocab or spelling, and really you did a nice job, I think, Negar, explaining, how can you do one without the other? You really need to kind of do both. Tell us about websites, other material. This is for Sreeniketh, just vocab in general. I think that there's so much material out there on the spelling bee side of things, but what do you do? What kind of material do you use for vocab? That's a question that lots and lots of people ask all the time. You mentioned a little bit, but tell us more.
Absolutely. So you might want to note this down for all of you listening, but the resources that I use were Norman Lewis. So if I look up Norman Lewis right now, it's hard for me to remember the exact titles. I just go by colors, but Norman Lewis has Word Power Made Easy, 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary. Those are the two books that I recommend, especially. If you find any others, that's also good, but those are the two that I used. Words of Wisdom by Scott Reamer. Words of Wisdom has 600 vocabulary words and has some quizzes near the back end of the book. It's mainly a spelling and like rules based, how do you guess the spelling sort of book, but it has some good resources on vocabulary. Additionally, there is a apologize, I'm typing because I remember the names. I can actually pull them up if you give me 1 minute. I can pull up the actual.
Tell you what, Sreeniketh, maybe you want to put them in the chat box, then you can just answer and people can take a look that way. How about that?
And one thing, Dr. Balu, is if any of you have any of those materials, references, you can send it to me. I will include that in the email.
Great.
We send it to all the registered and people. So please send me a note about what you think is a good reference.
We'll get those in the chat box. Sreeniketh can put them in the chat box and also send them to Dr. Desi Vijay, who can make sure that's part of the pre and post materials. But meanwhile, give us the visual, please, Sreeniketh. Go ahead.
Okay, so here is Words of Wisdom. This is the book that I recommend, number one, for spelling and vocabulary. Here is How to Build a Better Vocabulary. I always just call it the Blue Book by Maxwell Nernberg and Morris Rosenblum. And this is the big book of words you should know. I can type them in chat as well. This combined with the Norman Lewis resources are the main resources that I would recommend for vocabulary. If you'd like anything other than that, maybe the Consolidated Word List, but that's 30,000 words. That's a little harder to tackle. Those are my recommendations.
Okay.
And adding on to what Sreeniketh said, I use a lot of the same resources. I sort of studied spelling and vocabulary together, apart from also dedicating time to vocabulary. But the consolidated word list is especially important for people who are doing spelling and vocabulary together. It's traditionally seen as more of a spelling-based list, but there are a lot of excellent words that you should know how to use and should know the definitions for. And also, one more thing that I'd like to emphasize that I think not enough people are emphasizing currently. It's one thing that I always used to do as a speller, and even currently, I read the news. I look for good words in articles that I see every day, and a lot of times, even if you're looking at it strictly from the competition aspect, words that are used more, that are sort of characteristic of a certain era, they're more likely to be asked also, and they're great for enhancing your vocabulary because you also know how to use words properly. So one example that I often cite, it's kind of old, but in 2019, when President Trump was first impeached, the word quid pro quo came in a lot of news stories. You used to see it on the headlines almost every other day, or maybe even every day. And it's sort of something for something else is sort of the literal translation of what the word means. But in general, if you see words like that that are used a lot in news articles, you also feel this um, sort of this internal urge to understand what the word means and how to use it. And that's something that greatly enhances your vocabulary. It's just a small activity that you can maybe spend maybe 5 minutes a day on, and it's something that does really help in the long run.
To add on to that really quickly, what Navneet said is definitely true, that the best way to learn a word is to understand it in its habitat. A word is like a wild animal. You need to understand how it behaves, how it moves, where it is, because if you just cage it in a dictionary, if you just look at it like that, it's very dry. You won't understand it at all. I think this is especially true when I study like the NSF 1,000 words list. Just in the list, you have abacus, adamantine, like aboriginal, like you have all these A words, and you don't really, they all just look the same, and you don't understand anything at all at the end of the day, because you just get confused. Oh, is this the word? No, it's the other one, and you just don't get it. Whereas, as Navneet said, if you get a New York Times subscription, that's what I did when I was in 7th and 8th grade. Or there are some shows. If you're in my classes, you know I always reference the Phineas and Ferb as a TV show that has a lot of good words, and Percy Jackson and Harry Potter also are very accessible, very commonly read book series that a lot of, especially Greek and Latin Roman mythology, whereas in Percy Jackson, that I reference often, because knowing that context and, oh yeah, this was in that song, this was in that episode, that page number, that book, whatever, is, I think, the consistently best way to reference and understand a word.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Narayana Jenga the following question. What coach do you recommend?
All of them.
So how can you be so confident, sir?
So the materials are prepared, right? They're standard materials. It's not like they're teaching, everybody is bringing their own material. We have standardized the material, and it's standardized based on the feedback from the coaches themselves and the parents. Like I said, we started in 2 years, and the materials have been getting better and better. And like I said, this is the first time we are really focusing on contest prep, and the pros are working on putting together groups of these words that the kids can learn every week. So all the classes are standard format. They're all learning the same words, and they're all going to get the same homework and all that. So the coaches can supplement with their own materials, but I think it's really hard to understand what is the learning style for the child, right? To pair with a coach. That's probably something we can look into in the future, and then give you some attributes and traits for each coach. Like NISA does a lot of Kahoots, and it's a lot of fun for the kids to be in our class. And people like Negar and Sreeniketh and Jadon, they really go really deep into the origins of the words, and they really want kids to really understand, like Negar is saying, they really want kids to understand the culture around that word, the place around that word, and they really want to give you a picture of what happened with those word, like and why it is the way it is and all that stuff. So it's hard for us. We do not have an algorithm to pair students to coaches like that, but eventually we'll get there. But right now, it's just 1,000 words they're learning. I'm not expecting anybody to go really deep into any of that. it's going to be about 30, 40 words that the coaches are going to explain to the kids in the class, and then the kids will be expected to learn the other 150 words based on what they learned in the class. That's why we are trying to break those up into different groups. So I'm very confident for at least this time around. I think it will be fine. And all the coaches are really experienced, and they've taught 1 or 2 classes, or they have been teaching at their prep clubs, especially for spelling and vocabulary. So I'm really confident. I think the pairing will be okay for this time, but eventually we'll have more and more offerings for our spelling and vocabulary that Krishnan has a subject matter expert team put together, and all these panelists are part of the SME teams as well, and they have been helping. So we'll have more and more offerings to pair with the learning style of the child, with the coaching style of the coach. So they'll benefit more, but for now, this is what we have.
Great. Okay, so while you have the floor, if you can just respond to the question in the chat box about coaching and prep club that they're having some questions about. They're trying to sign up, it looks like. Just overall, I'll answer some of the questions, a lot of questions about when can kids start competing, right? What is the youngest age, Krishnan or Nesa, that a child can compete in our contests?
Yeah, I think the youngest is kindergarten is what we are recommending. You know, you have to spelling the words, right? So kindergartners can enroll as grade 0 in the system we allow them to enter. But you know, realistically, if you are done with junior and you want to compete in senior, we try to avoid people, you know, students getting burnt out with the higher levels. So unless you qualified and won the national championship at the junior level, you won't be allowed to do the senior level.
So K through 3 is junior, and then senior is 4 through 8. And then on the coaching side, we've actually added a level, right? So that our youngest kids can get something really focused for them. You know, so there's just a lot of questions, right? About how do I study? How do I get coaching? How do I participate, right? And I mean, all that is listed on our website in detail. And the bottom line is, you know, those who start early with NorthSouth and continue with it, and we've really built something that over the years would give folks a good base. You know, walk them through the coaching, use contest prep clubs, have our contests as a knowledge check-in, you know, get feedback, and then go back to coaching and learn more, right? And I do believe that as time progresses, right, we'll be able to tailor make coaching for those kids that have been with us for a long time. But for those who are just kind of getting started, the offerings within NorthSouth, we've done our very best to make them pretty accessible from a price point. And you know, you'll get quite a bit. And the goal is really to teach our kids the basics just of spelling and vocab, get them to understand patterns according to different languages and roots, right? And then progress from there. So let me see if I can get a couple of more questions up here. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask if this question, how do you guys remember all those words? Do you guys have a certain method of memorizing, or would you recommend it? I don't know if this was asked or not, but I think this is in the minds of a lot of people. Go ahead, Nesa.
Sure. So I think it is extremely impractical to think that you can just memorize every word because there are simply too many of them. So I think, I mean, this has probably been said to death, but I'll say it again. I think language patterns and specific root words that you can identify really narrows down the amount that you would have to chalk up to like rote memorization, which I say with parentheses because rote memorization really never works. It's more just understanding patterns. But like in terms of the vast majority of the words that you do have to learn, I would say patterns and roots and those kinds of things are absolutely necessary because just sheer memorization is impractical, at least for people like me. Memorization is somewhat required to like a certain extent, like certain exceptions to rules. Those would be some kinds of things that you would have to memorize. Also, for example, words maybe that have like an unknown origin or things like that, where really the key thing that would like essentially allow you to understand how to spell a word and understand a word without memorizing when that piece of information is taken from you, in the case of like unknown origin or not having a root, or maybe like a slang term that was born on the internet. Things like that are the kinds of things that would have to be chalked up to memorization. But those are really on a case by case basis. And for the like vast majority of words, I find that patterns and those types of learning methods are the best way to learn mass amounts of words kind of in one go.
Yeah, and adding on to what Nesa said, again, it's not practical to be able to remember all these words. It's again, there are way too many. So you do have to memorize to an extent. I think that's what she said about making exception lists. Exception lists are extremely important. But in order for exception lists to have any use, you need to be able to understand the roots, understand how to use roots, how roots come together, and apart from that, understanding how language patterns work and how words from certain languages are spelled. And it's really important to be extremely systematic with spelling because you can only remember so much. So if you maximize your reliance on language patterns for all the words possible, and if you know how to apply roots and how to put roots together to form words, I would say the majority of the dictionary you can master successfully. But for the remaining words, for words that don't follow any patterns, or words that don't follow any patterns, so like unknown origin words or unlisted words, as well as words that don't follow the patterns associated with certain languages, you do have to memorize. And apart from that, like for example, if a root has multiple ways of being spelled, you would have to isolate the less common ways that the root is spelled and find the words in that to memorize. So memorization does play a role in it, but rote memorization does play a role in spelling. You can't deny that. However, you have to be extremely systematic about what you're going to memorize and what you have to know, because the vast majority of spelling you can handle in a very systematic fashion.
All right, lots of questions about the resources. Again, it will be in the chat box. It will also be sent out by Desi Vijay after the session, so you'll be able to get those. Someone's asking about a free unabridged Merriam-Webster copy. Every now and then they will give you free access for a while, but I don't think you'll get permanent free unabridged Merriam-Webster access. Usually you do have to pay a fee for ongoing access to it. There were a few questions. I don't know if any of you can answer, and if not, I will gladly do so. What does a child do if their school doesn't participate in Scripps?
Yeah, there are not many options, unfortunately. I think they just have to wait or talk to your school admins. Usually what it is a few $100 fee that they need to pay to Scripps. And maybe if the parent is willing to put up the bill, maybe the school will start the B. And they also need to find the judges and all. So if you can help with all of that, maybe the school admins will let the school connect a B for your kids. But if other schools in your area are doing spelling bees, that's the only option. But if there is no sponsor for your area, then you can self-sponsor actually by talking to the B people, but that will require you talking to them directly and kind of finding options from them. You still need to go through a school or somebody to pick up that sponsorship, but that is a possibility. So either way, you have to talk to your schools and you have to talk to the Scripps Spelling Bee administrators for that to happen. There are a few options, but it all depends on what else is going on in your area. So we can't unfortunately give a definitive answer on that.
And one more thing, if you're able to get like your school to sponsor, but there's no regional B like where you live, one thing that Scripps did last year, at least, for basically all the regional Bs that were canceled due to COVID, they had these at-large regionals. Like there was one for the Midwest, there was one I think in the Bay Area. They had these essentially, they basically had their own regional bees that were conducted by people working at like the national level, and they were for people who didn't have their regional bees or who had their regional bees canceled. So that might be a possibility, but again, you do need your school to be registered to participate.
Yeah, it used to be that you could do a kind of freelance or wild card, right? But that was when it was live. So I think that this question is coming up often enough that I think Scripps will come up with a plan, but we'll have to see. There were questions about GOB and math in here. We're not going to be able to cover those today, but we are going to have Meet the Pros sessions for our core subjects. So stay tuned in the coming weeks. You can certainly come back to learn more about geo and history and math and some of these other things. So for those who are asking about coaching and contest prep clubs, our contests are very much open. Our contest prep clubs are very much open. They are not full. So if you're having any issues with that, you can certainly email our website and we can get you some more feedback on that. But there's plenty of space at this time. They may fill up, but they are not full at this time. Why don't I'll ask anyone in the group, talk to us about your families. How did your parents support you through this, right? I see over the years, I get a lot of questions in this chat box around, how do we win, or how do we learn, or right? But the answer is really, it's a team effort within a family. So can each of you talk us through what that journey was like with your family, and how much of the push was from you and how much of the push was from your parents?
I can go first. So the most important thing is obviously like 100% of the passion you have for even outside of a spelling perspective, like any competition should come from you, but it's fair to have people that support you throughout your journey, because it's really hard to do something that's so challenging without a support system. So basically what I did is I had my family support me while I was on this journey, rather than having them like force me or push me to go on this journey, right? So my dad took care of like all the technological side of things. Like if I ever wanted to generate a list for a specific pattern, he would do that. My sister would always motivate me. She would remind me of like why I started this spelling journey in the first place. And my mom was really important in that she would like quiz me whenever I needed somebody to quiz me over a certain list, or she would help me organize my study plan and things like that. So the most important thing I would say of having like a family support system is not to let that be what defines you, but something that supports you.
Okay, Jadon, you go next, please.
Yeah, like to add to that, I think really the primary purpose of like the parents in this context is to give their child exposure to the subject in the first place. And then after that, if the child enjoys it really and wants to continue to pursue it, then they should be able to try to support them in any like reasonable way. For example, like NorthSouth does like a great job with offering such a variety of subjects, and once the parent decides to sign them up for math or spelling or vocab, then they give them that 1,000 word list or like sample set of math problems. Then after that, it's just up to the child themselves to actually put the time and effort into it and try to see whether they can proceed with this in the future. I think no matter how much push from the parents there are, like if the child's not really enjoying it or like feels it as if it's a burden, then it's not going to be enjoyable for anyone in that like situation. So I think exposing like the student to the subject is a great thing that parents should strive to do. And then after that, it's just up to the student to continue to move on. Yeah.
Okay, Sreeniketh.
Yeah, so of course, what other people said with regards to if your child is not really sure that they want to do this, then don't force them. Obviously, that holds true because your motivation has to be internal. Second, if your kid does want to do it, but you're not sure how to help them, if you have the time, definitely learning dictionary diacritics, Merriam-Webster's diacritics on how to pronounce words, and helping them with quizzing the words, definitely a lot. I think that if you take a normal like list for a competition that you have like 1,000 words, it is good to quiz them definitely at least 3 times. I think that I've been quizzed several times on all my lists, but with something that's like 500 words, just for each word, either knowing the pronunciation or looking it up in the dictionary while you're quizzing them and going through all of them, that really helps. Other ways of helping them are just to give them the motivation whenever they're unsure to help them along. That's how my parents helped me in giving motivation and quizzing and making sure that I always had the resources that I needed. Those are the main ways that I can think of with regards to help. And obviously, whenever you feel that they're overly concerned with first or getting first or something like that, just remind them once again that it's about doing their best. I know it sounds cliched, but that is definitely the truth of it. And I think that's something that you should encourage in their outlook on competition in general.
Yeah, and to that point, right, I think every parent here knows you don't start Bharatanatyam with the Arangetram. You don't start piano with the piano recital, right? It takes years of just practicing some of the basic steps and the basic keys, right, to be able to get to that place. And this journey is no different. You got to start somewhere. You start with the word list provided on registration. You add to it by learning through curiosity, which is, again, a combined effort between child and parent, or child and parents, right? And then over time, as you learn more, right, you kind of learn exactly what the playing field is. So starting with the word list provided on registration, is it sufficient? No, but it is necessary. So without that, it's really impossible. Lots of questions about registration. We will make sure that those links are provided. They're also very much in your email. So the same way that the email list that you're on to get to this session today, you're now on our mailing list. So we'll make sure that everybody here gets a copy of those emails that were previously provided. Nesa, do you want to answer the question about your involvement in family?
Sure. So my parents, this goes without saying, but when I was competing in spelling, I was in middle school. So in terms of like financial access to resources and buying books and materials, obviously in that my parents did support me, but that was in no way the primary way that they supported me. I don't know if this was like a universal experience, but at least for me, sometimes the stretches between competitions, because I know a lot of competitions would happen in the summer or like in May in terms of like Scripps, right? Or like May, June-ish. But like they would all be condensed in the summer, and then over the course of the school year, it was like a long like stretch of time in which there was really no way for me to like test my skills in that way. And so every day when you're studying for a competition that's like 8 months away, and you have like, it feels like a long period of time. And in those times, sometimes you lose motivation and you lose that drive because things are so far away. And while you know that you're playing the long game, it still gets a little bit difficult, especially at the age that you're at in middle school. And in that terms, my parents did a phenomenal job keeping me motivated and keeping me interested and providing little incentives for me. So while obviously the big goal would be, this is just an example, but obviously the big goal would be like Scripps or NSF nationals or things like that. Maybe like if I'm able to complete this much at the end of like this week or this month or something, I would get like a little reward. Like I would be allowed to go, we would have like a fun day where we would like go to this theme park or go to see this movie that I wanted to see for a while that's just come out. You know, like little incentives like that seem small at the moment and even seem small when I'm saying it, but it was exactly what I needed, and my parents did a really good job of keeping me motivated. And not just my parents, I want to extend this because you said family, so I'm going to include my little brother in this. I think that I know that I'm very appreciative of him when I was spelling as well, because at the end of like a long day, my brother at the time had have been like 5, now he's older, but like keeping me refreshed and always being like a ray of sunshine in my life, even when things got hard or you know, the motivation was running low. He was always kind of a force for good and a force for motivation that I could reliably always turn to. And so in that way, I think my family really kept me going, and I really don't think that I could have persevered all 5 years if I hadn't had their support at all times. And for that, I am forever grateful.
Thank you, Nesa. Even though it is a little filmy to talk about the ray of sunshine.
I know it's filmy, but it's true.
But it is true. I've lived it in my family.
It's for a reason, you know?
Totally get it. My younger brother helped me. My boys helped each other out. There's no doubt. It is every successful family. It really does become a family affair. I'm teasing, but I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, for every successful figure, there's like 5 more behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Navneet, how about you?
Yeah, so definitely, I think my family played a very big role, a pivotal role in my spelling career overall. And as a lot of you guys have said, it's definitely a group effort. The flame, though, has to come from you. Like, if you're not interested in spelling, if it's not something that you're passionate about, it is definitely very hard to follow through, even if you have all the support behind you. Personally, my mother played a really big role in my spelling journey. She helped me study, she helped me stay organized, and my father and my sister definitely motivated me throughout my journey, and they helped make my successes into a reality, or they helped make my dreams into a reality in terms of spelling. And definitely the bonding, the camaraderie within my family, it's something that I'll treasure, something that I treasure about spelling, because it made me sort of my family. And I think that's something that a lot of the panelists here will agree with.
Thank you very much. We have about 7 minutes to go, so I'm going to hand things back to Dr. Desi Vijay, who's going to carry us to the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Balu, for the most interesting session. And since we have about 5 minutes left before we go, the most of the questions is asked about you know, the preparation and all those things. But one thing I wanted to stress upon, and also I want you guys to pitch in, saying that the competitions where we are NorthSouth is holding is not for winning the medals or winning the prizes, but participating itself is a winner. We used to call everybody is a winner. And I want you to go back and think about the days you really were not on the top of your game, but still you persevere to come and do it the next time, like that. So can you guys share your experience, saying that, hey, winning is, we will strive to win, but you know, failure is always on the way.
That was a tough one there from you.
Yeah, I think everybody is muted, so they're not. I don't know whether
I might rephrase the question.
I think that describes everyone, right? I mean, there's, you look at every bio here, right? Nobody went once and won, right? Like every one of them had to study for years. Almost every Scripps champion, Negar is of course an exception, but almost every Scripps champion, right, is there for a third, fourth, fifth time at the Nationals. And there are lots of people that go to the Nationals 5 times, right, and don't place in the top 5. There are lots of people like that. But so many of them actually say, I had a blast. I learned a lot. I gained experience with my family. I created bonds with other spellers. I met lifelong friends. It is incredible the sort of energy and camaraderie that's been built. And it's not unique to spelling, right? Spelling is kind of one of the most special places that we have, but I think Negar, you'll agree with that. In geography, we've seen that among our kids and parents that participate in math. Over learning, you create family. Over learning, you create community. And nobody succeeds without failure. Nobody. Anybody who succeeds without failure is actually failing because they're failing to achieve their potential. It's as simple as that. I did not win the National Spelling Bee without trying 3 times previously. I went to the Nationals twice. I lost those times. I did not win. And my parents looked at me and said, are you sure you want to do this again? And I said, yeah, I want to do it again, regardless of what the outcome is. And I was lucky enough to win that last time. And nobody knows what the outcome will be. Certainly back in the 1980s, I did not know what the outcome would be. I was very fortunate that it worked out. But it's really about the journey. The outcome is much, much, much less. And, we heard Sreeniketh speak earlier about, we're responsible for doing the job. We're not responsible for the outcome. The outcome will come, right? And whatever the outcome is that is prescribed for us, that'll come. We got to do our job. It's very clearly written in, whatever scripture you believe in, that's written in many different languages in many different ways. And that is what the learning journey is really all about. Go ahead, Krishnan.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask every one of the panelists to answer the following, and then we'll come to wrap it up. What's the youngest age at which you won, and what grade are you currently in? Okay, so those are 2. And then what is the highest point where you felt great that you accomplished, and what's the lowest point where you think, oh, I should get out of this? And you
want everyone to answer in 30 seconds, all of those questions.
Yes, all the 4 questions, and that will wrap it up. Go ahead,
Okay,
Nesa.
start with Nesa, and then we'll go around. Go ahead, Nesa.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I'm on a time crunch, so I'm gonna go quick. But the first competition in which I won, at least for spelling, was I was 9 in 4th grade, and I won my school spelling bee. That would have been the very first. And a moment where I felt at my lowest would have probably been when I competed at Scripps in 2015, I think, pretty sure. And that was the year that I missed semifinals because of the preliminaries test. I missed by 1 point, and it was a hard moment. I'm not gonna understate it. It was really difficult, and I really contemplated my dedication at that time because it was a difficult moment to go through. And at my highest, probably when I got in the moment it felt terrible to get second at nationals, but then the week after, the magnitude of the accomplishment hit me, and so maybe the week after the 2018 National Spelling Bee was probably when I felt at my highest.
Great, thank you. Navneet, go for it.
Yeah, so I won my first spelling bee somewhere in 4th grade, and it was my school spelling bee as well. And in terms of my highest and lowest points, I would say my highest point, I've won several national titles, but I wouldn't say they were my highest point. My highest point was in 2019. This is a story that I feel was one of the most important parts of my spelling career. I was on the way to my regional spelling bee, and we unfortunately met with a car accident, and I ended up fracturing my right arm. I would find out later that day. and I went on to compete at my regional spelling bee, and I was thankfully able to win that bee. And obviously my mental state was kind of altered when I participated in that bee, but somehow just to sort of to see, and like I wanted to see my hard work that I put into that bee come into fruition, and by winning that bee, that's what happened. And that was, I would say, my highest point, because I never thought I would accomplish something like that, and especially in that state of mind. And my lowest point, it's really hard to define, because I never really contemplated seriously quitting spelling or anything like that. It would probably be Scripps Nationals of that year, because with my hand fractured, it was my right hand that was fractured, and the cast went all the way up here, like above my elbow. So I couldn't write anything, I couldn't type anything. So my preparation was kind of hindered that year. I ended up placing 11th. But I used that sort of, and after the bee happened, my hand was pretty much completely healed, thankfully. And I used that sort of as an impetus, sort of as a force that made me study more, that made me more perseverant. And I was able to win 3 national spelling bees in that summer. So I think bouncing back off that failure would also be one of the other high points of my career.
Great. And what grade are you in currently?
I'm a sophomore in high school.
All right. Let's move on to Jadon.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep this quick. So I'm currently a freshman in college, and I would say the first time I won my first spelling bee was actually probably later than most other people, because my brother was oftentimes the one that won the school spelling bee. So it was probably in 4th grade that I won my school spelling bee. As for like my lowest point and highest point, my lowest point was probably when I was in 6th grade and I was at nationals, and I was just about to make it to the late night finals for the competition, but I just made some careless mistake on a word that otherwise could have been pieced together through language patterns, and I missed out on the last round of the semifinals. So that was like a big bummer, because I figured I studied the word before and I should have been able to piece it together. But the highest point came actually the next year on the path to the eventual victory. But it was the last round of the semifinals again, and I'd gotten the word canton, which is like it's like an instrument with like 5 strings, and I didn't recall how to spell the word, but I was able to actually keep my composure and piece together the word, knowing my French language patterns. So I was able to spell that correctly and then actually move on to the finals. So I would say that was like a nice journey to like come full circle with. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Negar, let's go.
Right now I'm a junior in high school. My highest point is definitely when I won in 2016, especially because I didn't expect to. I was only in 5th grade, and when I got to the top 10, I was like, I'm fine if I get out on the first round. But eventually I made it to win the entire championship, and that was very exciting. My lowest point was probably the year before that, when I missed making it to nationals by 1 place. At that time, I had to participate in the Houston regionals, which is probably or back then was probably like the hardest regionals in the country, and I missed on the word marinara, which is not the sauce, it's a dance, M-A-R-I-N-E-R-A, and the reason why I got it wrong is because the judge said the origin incorrectly. If he said Latin, I would have said M-A-R-I, but I said M-A-R-A, and so that was my lowest point, because I realized that even when you get a word wrong, it's important to keep your head in the game, because if I challenged about that, I probably would have went through, but I didn't, because I was so bummed out that I lost. So that was my lowest point, and yeah, is there anything else I'm missing?
No, I think that's great. And your very first spelling bee? or very first championship?
Oh yeah,
What?
my very first spelling bee was actually NSF. In kindergarten, I didn't do much. I just kind of went there just to see what it would be like. But in first grade, I won regionals, which I didn't expect at all. And then I started from there.
Okay, great. So let's wrap it up with you, Sreeniketh. Go for it.
I'm currently a freshman in college. I go to college as Jadon. The first spelling bee that I placed in was second place regional spelling bee in NSF. I got second in spelling and then fourth in vocabulary. The first that I won, I think, was school spelling bee in fifth grade. For all of you worrying, if you you did the spelling bee and you didn't place well this year or whatever, in sixth grade I got second in my school spelling bee. In seventh grade I got seventh in nationals. So your previous year doesn't really mean much for your future performances. And then high low points, I generally don't feel like I have a lot of high low points, but I think I'm placid overall. But maybe high point is 2016 spelling bee. Just the entire day in semifinals, I got a word Zwitterayen, which I didn't know, like Jérôme with Canton, but I pieced together with German language patterns. So that was pretty cool, I think. And low point, I don't know. Maybe I spelt a word too fast in fourth grade in my fourth grade school spelling bee, and that kind of sucked because I knew the word and I just said it wrong. So that was, I guess that would be the low point.
This is great. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. I think this is great. They say I will stop here, and I think we're over a few minutes, so we might want to conclude here. Thank you.
Let's conclude. I thank you all, the pros, for your time, efforts, and frankness in talking about your experience to everybody. And I also want to thank Dr. Balu for moderating this session, and Krishnan and Narayana for answering questions and then staying with us. Thank you all the audience for attending the seminar. I hope you found this very interesting, as I did, and learned a lot. We are continuing with this same theme. In 2 weeks, we are going to have a mid-pro webinar on Brain Bee contest, and it'll be on January 23rd at noon Eastern. We'll be sending you the details pretty soon, and then please do attend those things. And also, like Dr. Balu said, we are continuing with the same theme through February and March, so that we will try to cover all the contests and then bring in all the people who have succeeded or have something to tell about how to do the contest. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you here.
And Dr. Vijay, just one thing I want to say before they leave. The classes are getting full. Vocab is almost gone. Spelling, I see 3 classes are full. So parents are interested, I would jump on it right away, because we have not even done a national blast yet, but Krishnan is going to do one, I think, in the next couple of days. So whatever is left will be gone pretty fast.
Okay.
My special thanks to all of you panelists. You've been great sharing your experiences and continuing to help, coach and also contribute to the contest. Look forward to your participation. Thank you again.